Okay, morning everybody. Welcome to the last of my STEM lockdown digital school lessons. Excuse me, frog in my throat. This is grade 10 information technology and my name is Karen Anderson. I will start off the lesson by telling you I don't know what's going to happen as far as the lessons are concerned from next week. So please just keep an eye on the Africa Teen Geeks website, on the social media, sign up for their newsletter on their website so that you can be informed of what is going on. Okay. Right, so today's lesson, when I get there, is going to be a reasonably relaxed one because I think I gave you a lot of information yesterday with the items and the item indexes and case statements and all kinds of things like that. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through the solutions to all of those activities that I gave you yesterday, even though I only made one of them compulsory. I'm going to go through the solutions to all of them so that if you were proactive and you did the work, then you can at least check your answers and see that you're on the right track. And then I'm going to go all the way back to changing object properties dynamically. There are a few new things that I want to show you with that. And remember, I've said in a previous lesson, sorry guys, I think I'm speaking too fast again. Dynamically means in code. So when we change something statically, we do it in the object inspector. When we do it dynamically, that's when we do it using our code. So I know that I started off looking at that, and now we're going to go back to it, to some of the slightly more complicated ones that you might have missed. Okay, so this was the first activity that you had to do. Remember, you were given a constant that had 1,000 Rand in it for a budget, and then the user got to select what they would like to spend their 1,000 Rand on and how much they wanted to spend. And you needed to then indicate to them whether they could spend that money, whether that item was essential or not, and then output for them in neat columns exactly what it was that they were spending their budget on. So let's have a look. So here is the code for the on-click event of BTN Add. And again, what I've done is I've shown you under the var section of the form was a variable called RBudget that was declared and given a value. Okay, so this was a variable that was given the value of 1,000. Okay, not a constant because it doesn't have the word const above it. Okay, so this part. I have okay, somebody muted me. No, I'm not. Okay. All right, guys, please remember to keep your cameras and your microphones off, because if you try and turn on your camera, then the host is going to kick you out. Then you lose out for some silly mistake. So rather just listen. If you have questions, you are more than welcome to type them in the chat feature, but don't turn on your your cameras. Okay. All right, so let's get back. So in the on-click event of the add button, I'm going to go back so that you can see what I'm talking about, or not, because now my computer won't cooperate. There's the add button. Okay, so when they click the add button, the first part is validation. So step one is if the item index of RGP budget equals -1, remember that means nothing has been selected, then show a message that says please select an option and exit this procedure. That means that no other code that comes after this is going to be executed, but only if the item index equals -1. Okay. Okay, so somebody sent me a message to say, my friend has stopped coming to these because he says we're going to relearn all this when we go back to school. He says it's not important to come to these. Look, that's up to the individual, but I think it's a little bit risky to not come to these lessons, and then suddenly you go to school and you find yourself where the teacher goes, oh, okay, let's move on from what was taught, and he's behind and he has to go and catch up. Okay. And Jared, a very good point. You're sitting at home. Why not use your time effectively by learning something? Okay. Please remember my classes, Jared, that I'm going to be doing something similar to this, but just with my classes. Okay, but let's move on. Okay, so only if the item index is -1 will it show a message and exit the procedure. Okay, then the next thing is to say if EDT amount.text equals nothing. Now, please note, guys, I'm pointing out some important things here, and I feel like I need to slow down again. I don't know why I'm talking so fast. You need to check that this here is the text property of the edit. You can't read it into a variable and see if it equals nothing. You have to check if the actual component equals an empty string, then show a message and exit. And the reason for this one is, okay, Kevin, I've seen your message. I'll look at it now. I just want to finish this. Okay. The reason for that code is I'm asking them to enter a number into this edit. If they enter a word into the edit, and then here I try and convert it into a float, my program's going to crash. So this is all protecting my program from some twit who decides they're going to type a word in when they're supposed to type in a number. Okay, so this is your validation before your input. Same thing. If the text property is empty, it's going to show a message and exit the procedure. Okay. All right. I just want to have a look and see quickly. Kevin, he says it's because some people can't come to these online lessons as they don't have access. So he says they have to reteach. So he may have a very valid point there. But if he's had the opportunity to actually have the lessons, then he's very dumb not to take that opportunity, quite honestly. Okay, all right, and Jared and Callum are having a conversation, and since it's come up and I have Delphi open, okay, Jared, if I select the edit and I find the numbers only property of the edit and I set that to true, then it means that the user can only enter numbers into that edit. Okay, but what you have to remember, what's very, very important, is your teachers mark your code. So if you're in a test or an exam and they tell you to validate the numerical input, if you just change the numbers only property in the edit, when I mark your printout, I don't see that. So therefore, you don't get the marks for knowing the code to do that. So in your PATs, with absolute pleasure, change properties in the object inspector. But in a test or an exam, we're testing that you know how to code. So therefore, changing properties is not going to get you the marks. Okay. Unless, of course, the question tells you to do it in the object inspector, which I highly doubt any of your teachers are going to do. Okay, right, so this is the first part of it. Validate the radio group, validate the edit, and then after the validation, assign the number that they've placed into R amount. Okay, then the next part of the code. Okay, so Sandy, what would the code look like? That's what the code would look like. Okay, so to check if they have entered anything. Of course, this one's not going to check your very valid point there. It's not going to check that it's a number. Okay, so there you would have to use a separate if statement that checked if you could use in, but you'd have to have a loop. So it gets pretty complicated, which you guys haven't done yet. Okay, so you wouldn't be asked to check that it's a number yet, but you would use something called the val procedure, which is probably coming up pretty soon. Okay. Right, so let's have a look at how we do the calculation now. So now your next if statement says, if our budget minus our amount is less than 0. In other words, if I take what they want to spend and I subtract it from the amount of money they have available, and that's less than zero, in other words, they don't have any money, then you're going to show a message, you can't afford this item, and exit again. Okay, otherwise, you can subtract that amount from the budget. I see Jared's asked a question. I'm just going to look quickly. Is there a numbers only property that you can code? Yeah, you could. Remember, every property that you see in the object inspector, you can do in your code. So you could actually cheat and say edit.numbers only gets the value of true in your code. Okay. Yes, Sandy, this all goes under the add button. Okay, I just couldn't fit it all on one slide, so I've separated it. Okay, so this code follows exactly underneath this. So I read in the amount, and then I determine whether that amount is going to break the bank. Okay, Kevin, you can't pause them live. Okay, but once they're uploaded to YouTube, which is later today, then you can pause it. Oh dear, well, you better run. Okay, there we go. Jared, go to YouTube and rewatch it. Okay, all right, so our budget minus our amount, check if it's going to cause a problem in their budget. Are they spending too much money? Otherwise, subtract it from what they've got. So if I wanted to spend 200 Rand on shoes and I've got 1,000 Rand, I'm now going to end up with 800. Okay, then S budget is going to get the value of, remember we discussed this, RGP budget.item index is going to tell me which one was selected. So let's go with the shoes. I love shoes. Okay, which means that the item index is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the item index will be 4. The items will then be returned the word next to the 4, which is shoes. So S budget would now use shoes if that was what I, as the user, selected. Okay, couldn't you say our budget is less than amount? You could at the end, but not at the beginning. Okay, you could only say that once you've subtracted a few things, and that's why you have to make this so that it works for the first time they buy something, the second, the third. Keep subtracting from your budget. Okay, just trying to think. Yeah, it would depend. You'd have to test it. It might work. Okay, all right, so let's have a look. Then I've got my case statement that takes the item index and determines whether this item is essential or not. Okay, remember the question told you books, clothes, and data are essential. So books, clothes, and data are essential. Okay, all right, then you've got a problem there. You need to have a look and see where the error is. Maybe have a look at my code and see what mistake you made. You've obviously left out a bracket or something. Okay, so 0, 2, and 4 are non-essential items. So my case statement goes, case item index of 0 to 2, 4 begin. S essential gets non-essential item, and I ink the number of non-essential items. If the item index is 3, 5, or 6, then S essential gets essential item, and I ink the number of essential items. Else, S essential gets uncategorized item, and I ink I other. Okay, so that's the logic behind determining which of the items that they've selected is either non-essential or essential. Remember that we have a begin and an end here because there are two things that I want to happen if the item index is one of these. Okay, and remember somebody very kindly pointed out, Ditloff, I think, that the colon is the same as the then. So if the item index is 3, 5, or 6, then begin and do that code. Okay. All right, if it underlines the red output, then it's probably because you haven't named it correctly. Have a look and see what you've called the component and whether you've done it the same in your code. Okay, Bukhang. Right, and then my output is going to look like this. Okay, red output.lines.add S budget, so whatever is in S budget from the radio group, plus #9, it said neatly in columns, plus float to string F, the amount as currency, plus #9, the budget amount, plus #9, S essential, which is going to either hold uncategorized essential or non-essential, depending on the case statement. And then the label, maybe you've left out a begin or an end somewhere, Booker. Essential, output the number of essentials, plus #10 to put non-essential underneath it, and the number of them, plus #10 to put uncategorized. So they're now going to be listed one underneath each other, each of the counters representing how many essential, how many non-essential, and how many others, depending on which of these was inked, which depended on which of these was selected. Okay, so this is quite a complicated activity. Hopefully, I have now explained everything that's here. I'm going to give you a quick second or two if anybody has any questions about this code before we move on. Okay, and Bukrang, like I said, I think you need to, maybe you've probably got a semicolon issue. Have a look and see if you've got semicolons and brackets and things. And look at your errors. Okay, so I'm going to assume nobody's got any questions. There we go. Probably yes, Jared. I think it probably is one of the toughest that you've done. Okay, it's pretty hectic, but it's good practice. Okay, the other ones that I gave as extension were probably a bit easier. Okay, so yes, this is quite difficult to work out. All right, then the next part said display the item, amount, money left, and their budget, and whether it's, so that was the part that I've just discussed here, and this the output, which is up there, over there. So I had the budget or the output in the previous slide. I've just made it bigger here. So this code, please note, is a copy of this code. Okay, all I've done is I've made it bigger. I've shown you that I'm still in the add button, and I've given you a screenshot of what it would look like, this. Okay, and also pointing out that because it said in neat columns, you would have had to do this in the onActivate event of the for. Okay, and remember what I said to you before, 1, 2, 3, 4 columns means I have to set 3 tabs. Okay, because how many times do I type #9? I type it 3 times. So therefore, I need a tab for every #9. And if you have a look as well, also remember, once again, there's our old friend 0 as far as Delphi is concerned. Things start from 0. If you have numbers that are slightly different to this, let's say, for example, you set your first tab at 60. In a test or an exam, you would still get the mark. Okay, if you said 150 for the first one and your tabs were completely out, then you would lose a mark. And I personally, I don't know what other teachers do, but if I have something like this and you set 4 tabs, I'm going to take a mark away, because you need to know that 4 columns means 3 tabs. Okay, and then our usual favorite one, you have to initialize your counters. So because you were inking I essential, I non-essential, and I other in your case statement, you have to initialize all of them in the onActivate event of the for. Okay, and then we put headings in, as you can see there, because it looks nice. User friendliness is what it's called. Okay, any questions? Okay, I'm moving on. If there are any, I'll come back. Right, then the remove button. Okay, so this is now if they decide, oh, actually, I don't want to buy that anymore. So now they're going to take it off their budget. So that means they're going to get more money. I don't want to spend the 200 Rand on those shoes anymore. So now I need to get that money back to my budget. So how does that work? Again, I'm reading this in. Now, this is interesting Because I haven't validated the amount for the remove button because I wasn't told to. So the program's going to crash if they don't put anything and then click the remove button. But because the instruction wasn't there to validate, I don't have to do that. So remember, in tests or exams, you only do what you are instructed to do, unless, of course, your teachers in your classrooms give you a different instruction. But generally, and certainly as far as the matric exams are concerned, you only do what you're instructed to do and what the hints in the screenshots tell you. Okay, so what I'm saying is, if there is not an instruction that says validate the input, then you don't have to do it. Okay, in a test or an exam. In a PAT, you have to validate everything. Okay, your program for your PAT has to be bulletproof. Okay. All right, so there's your little tips for the day. Hope you all got them. So I'm reading in my amount again. So it's the same input. Okay, then I'm determining what they've selected. So again, I'm using SBudget, redeclared, guys. Okay, so if I go all the way back to here, I declared R amount and SBudget in the add button. Okay, then I declare them again in the remove button. And Delphi sees these two as completely different variables. Okay, these two variables are in COVID-19 isolation. Nobody is going to come into contact with them outside of this button click. Okay, so new R amount, even though it's got the same name, gets the contents of the edit converted to real. New SBudget gets whatever they've selected. Okay, yes, you missed a lot, Kevin, so concentrate. Less typing, more listening. So now whichever one they've selected in the radio group is going to be assigned to SBudget. Okay, then my if statement is the opposite of what it was when I was wanting to add things to my budget. In other words, wanting to buy things. Now I've changed my mind. I don't want the shoes anymore. So now if our budget plus our amount is less than or equal to 1,000, I can't get more than my 1,000. Okay, think about the logic. If you have a job and they pay you 5,000 Rand a month for your job, and you decide, oh, I know, I'm not going to buy food this month. That means I will now have 6,000 Rand for the month. That's not the way it works. Okay, you start with your salary, and if you spend money, let's say 500 Rand on sweets at the tuck shop, then you have less money. If you decide not to buy those sweets, you go back up to your limit of 5,000. Okay, so you need to remember, guys, I keep saying, think about it logically. Think about the real world when you write these programs. So if what I've got in my budget, plus now the shoes I've decided not to pay 200 Rand for, is less than 1,000, then I can remove it from my budget. So now I say, and removing it from the budget means adding it to my money. So now my budget is going to get what's already in it because I've already spent 500 Rand on data. Now I added 200 Rand for the shoes. So now I've got 700. Okay. Yes. No. Yes. No. 300. Okay. Then I output SBudget plus #9 plus a minus to indicate that I'm subtracting it, that amount, and then what's left in my budget and the word item removed. So here is an example of some of the items that I've removed. So no more 100 on a book. So now my budget is 300 Rand and I indicate item removed. Then I take some other thing off that was worth 50 Rand. So now my budget is up to 350 Rand. I don't want to spend that 50 on whatever that other was. Okay. All right. Float to string doesn't exist Okay, float to string F, okay, is to format your variable, in this case as currency, with 10 spaces and 2 decimal places. If you're not sure, I explain it in one of the very early videos, so you can go onto YouTube and look at it there. Okay, then same case statement, guys. Evaluate the item index of my radio group. And again, if it's 0 to 2 or 4, decrease the number of non-essential items. If it's 3, 5, or 6, decrease the number of essential items. These are my counters, remember? I'm removing books, 1 books, because I'm not buying it anymore. Okay. How do we know the prices of the things? The user gets to decide. Okay. So if we go all the way back, sorry, my keyboard and mouse and everything is not cooperating. Remember, the user is entering how much they are wanting to spend on that. So the user chooses. If they want to spend 1,000 Rand just on data, then they can do that. Okay, so they decide. It's not necessarily prices, it's how much they want to spend on those things. Same as tuck shop, you choose if you get an allowance, whether you want to spend all your money or just some of it. Okay, so these here are to then subtract. So I was spending, or I had bought 3 non-essential items. Now I'm removing it from my budget. So I'm putting the money back in and I'm buying 1 less non-essential item. So I have to decrease the number of non-essential items that I'm buying. Okay, and then I redisplay. So this code is exactly the same as it was for the add button, but I'm redisplaying it because possibly I essential, I non-essential, and uncategorized have changed. Okay, and then I've got an else. If you look here, if the budget amount is less, I do all of this, else invalid amount, budget exceeds 1,000. So remember what I said to you? You don't get more money on your salary just because you decide not to buy everything at the tuck shop. So if you try and add more than 1,000 to your budget, it's got to pop up with a message to go, sorry for you, you only have 1,000. Okay. All right, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to go on to the rest of these questions. Okay. So the next one that you needed to do, okay, when you're done with this program, can you please go, okay, I'll do it now. All right, let's do it now. Okay, so here's the program. Let's run it and I'll show you what it does. Good question. Okay, so this is what pops up. Let's say I decide, even though we can't right now, I want to go to the movies and I am going to spend 100 on the movies. I then click add. And my counter here in my label says essential 0, non-essential 1, uncategorized 0. And in my radio group, it says movies for 100. I have 900 Rand left in my budget and it's non-essential. Okay, so let's do something essential. So now I select clothes and I'm going to spend 500 on clothes. And I click add. Okay. And now I've got only 400 Rand left in my budget and I've spent 500 on clothes. So now let's try and spend too much. So let's go, because books are very important. So let's try and spend 600 on books. Add. I cannot afford this item. And I click OK and everything is left as it is. Okay, so let's spend a little bit more money. Let's spend another 200 on other. Okay, so now I've got one of each of them. Okay, I just want to see, Sandy's asked a question. How do you add all these tabs at the top? Oh, that's a page control. Okay. How you put what there? Oh, okay, all right. Yes, I'll show you, Nana. Okay, if I have it at the end of the lesson, if there's time, I'll show you how to put a page control in. Okay, so these are the options. If I now decide, but hang on a second, I want to remove 50 of the movies. So I select movies and I then type 50 and I click on remove. It subtracts 50 and it adds it to my 200 that I had left of my budget. And it indicates item removed. Okay, so that's how the budget program works. Okay. All right, let's go on to the next ones because now I'm going to look at the Gold Reef City one. Okay, so let's have a look. Right, so this one here is that the user had to buy a ticket. So if we look at the program, okay, let's run it so I can show you. So they're going to select what type of ticket they want to buy at Gold Reef City. So let's say, for example, I want a thrill rider ticket. I'm going to select it in the combo box and I'm going to click ticket. It tells me what it costs. Then I'm going to choose a pensioner ticket. Pensioners are cheaper. Then if I click total, it tells me total number is this, and number of tickets is 2, and my average is 197. In other words, the average cost per ticket is 197. Okay, let's have a look at what the code looks like for that one. So here, S ticket gets my combo boxes items based on my combo boxes item index. Okay, the question said, if it's the first ticket to be bought, then you need to clear the rich edit. Okay, how do I know if it's the first ticket to be bought? It's if I ticket equals 0, because remember, I'm counting how many tickets are being bought. So I've initialized I ticket in the on activate event of the form, 0 tickets bought. So if the first time I click the button to say buy a ticket, if I ticket equals 0, then I must have a clear rich edit. Otherwise, based on the item index of my combo box, there's my combo box. So Thrill Rider is going to be at 0 item index. Non-rider is going to be at 1 item index. So here I've got my case statement. If the item index is 0, our amount is 215, and I ink 1 more ticket. Okay, now this one's pretty straightforward, except for the fact that family ticket means you buy 4 tickets. Okay, so if you're buying 4 tickets, it costs 550 Rand, but you're getting 4, not just 1. So if the item index is 5, so if they've selected family tickets, then amount gets 550, but I ink I ticket by 4, because now I'm buying 4 tickets, not just 1 like the others. And then the last one, child under 3, the amount is 0, and we show a message saying no ticket needed, because children under 3 don't get a ticket because they can't go on the rides at Gold Reef City. Okay, so there's no ink if they select this one because I'm not buying a ticket. Then running total, like we've seen before, total gets the value of total plus R amount. And since you've all been sitting, listening all very quietly, why can't I use ink for this? Why couldn't I say ink R total, comma, R amount? I'm just keeping you all awake because I think you're probably all sleeping there, because I've got such a soft, soothing voice that you can sleep to. Thank you, Ruben. Well done. Okay. It's because total is real. Ink doesn't work with real data types. It only works with integers. So you can't use ink here. You have to say R total gets the value of R total plus R amount. And hopefully you all remember, what will I have had to do with R total and I ticket? I've discussed I ticket already. What would I have had to do with R total? Initialize. Yes, yes, good. Well done, guys. And then I output into my rich edit the total amount. Okay, amount being what they have to pay. So this is all when they select their option in the combo box. Okay. Oopsie, mouse isn't cooperating. In the total button, you now have to calculate the average price per ticket and display the total amount. You've seen this a lot, okay? Average is locally declared. Total and ticket would have been declared under private. And then you've got your output of the total amount, the number of tickets, and the average. Okay, so this question is a lot more easy to understand and do than the first one. That's why I gave you the first one, because it was hard. Okay. Then the schools activity on page 76. Let's look at it. It looks like this. Okay. I'm going to show you what happens when I run it, just so that you can see. So now what's happening is we select the school, we enter the number of learners in that school. I've got a default value of 1,200, but let's make it 2,000. Okay, and then I click OK, and it tells me that that school's going to earn that much money in school fees because it's taken an amount, can't remember the amount, per child, multiplied it by the number of pupils, and added it. Okay. Retry is now, whoopsie, oops, crashed my program. Shouldn't have done that, but I'll look at that just now. Okay, right, so let's have a look at this activity here. Also pretty straightforward. So in the on-click event of my list box, so here I'm doing it in the list box. If iLearners equals 0, then clear the rich edit. So again, if I haven't entered any learners, then clear the rich edit. My school is going to be displayed as preschool, primary school, or high school, depending on the item index, in other words, whichever one they selected. Okay. Then I read in the number of learners from the input box. So an input box pops up, it converts it to an integer. And once again, I'm using the list box's item index to say, if it's 0, in other words, if they selected preschool, a preschool is 42,000 Rand per learner per year. Primary school is 45 and high school is 48. So I take the number of learners, multiply it by that amount that I was given, and assign it to R fees. So if there's 3 children in the school, it's going to be 3 times 48,000. Then again, my favorites, total fees gets what's in total fees plus R fees, in other words, the most recent information. And learners gets what's in learners plus INUM. Now, I could have used Inc for this, but what would it look like? Can anybody tell me, if I'd used Inc, what would this line of code look like using Inc? Can't remember. It would be Inc, iLearners, comma, iNum. There we go, Ruben. Yes, yes. Okay, excellent. Inc, iLearners, comma, iNum. But either one is correct and you would get marks for either one. Okay, and then this output is to display our fees, which is the amount for that specific capturing. Okay. Then in the done button, it's going to display the total amount of a fee. So I've added, what is Inc? That's how you count. Okay. Go back and look at earlier videos, Abdul. Okay. And then my number of learners is going to be displayed there. And then, this is interesting, it's giving me an error. It gave me an error because it didn't like the set focus to the edit. But this is the retry button that resets everything for all of your different components. Okay, and there's your tab count again. Okay, for your buttons, for your budget one. And that's why we had to put the if statement in to clear the rich edit, because otherwise you'd have the tabs for the other, or the headings on the other ones. Okay. All right, then remember this. I'm going to go through this quite quickly because we've done it. Remember when we change the properties of objects in code, it's component dot property gets the value of. So EDT input dot top gets the value of a number because the top property is an integer. Okay. Then remember, I also pointed out to you guys that sometimes, remember I told you don't use the 3 dots. Sometimes there's a plus sign next to the option. And that means that you have to follow the steps that you followed in the object inspector, you need to follow in your code. So edtcost.font.color gets the value of and the color that you choose. And color starts with CL. Okay, there it is there, CL red. So you always use your object inspector to give you clues as to what your code must look like. This one we've done. Okay, when it comes to enabled and visible, you need to set it to true. Okay, color, like I said to you already, is CL red. So this is all stuff that we've done. It's a nice slow stroll through revision for all of this. But the next thing that's coming up just now is something that I haven't shown you before. Okay, when it comes to setting the style of something, you'll see in the object inspector that again, you have to click the plus and you have bold, italic, underline, and strikeout. And like color says CL red or CL yellow, FS is what you have to put in front of bold, italic, underline for font style. Okay, but if you have a look at the object inspector, there are square brackets next to the style, which means you'd think if you look at the object inspector that you've got to do something like true or false. For this one, you don't. What you have to do is you have to say edtinput.font.style gets the value of FS italic in square brackets. It has to have square brackets. If you wanted it to be bold and italic, then you'd have to say FS italic, comma, FS bold, all inside the square brackets. Okay, because you've got more than one option here. If you want to remove the bold or the italics, you have to give it empty square brackets. Okay, so please remember, if you're using FS for font style or CL for your colors, they don't need inverted commas around them because they're almost like their own data type. But when it comes to the names of stuff like the font name, you have to put inverted commas around it. Okay. So you've got to look at if a data type is string, just a word, then it's going to get inverted commas. Remember also that true and false Boolean properties do not get inverted commas because they are actually true and false. Okay. Then a nice, easy bit of homework for the long weekend. Okay, last bit of code for the activity. Which activity, Ruben? I'm going to carry on talking until you tell me and then I'll go back for you. Okay. So this activity here is really nice and fun. You've done this. Okay. In the onActivate event, disable the reset button, make the image invisible, change the width property of the form, change the following properties of the label using code. Okay. And then this is what it's going to look like. So when the form activates, that's what this is going to look like. The gold reef one. Okay. The ticket, oh, Sandy, quite a few. Okay, so let's go back quickly. Ruben wants to see the last bit of gold reef, which was there. Is that what you're looking for, Ruben? That's in the total button, which is the tickets activity that Sundry that you're asking about. Quite a few marks. I would guess that that would almost be close to a 1 hour test. Okay, maybe a little bit short. You probably have to add a few things in. Okay, but maybe a 30, 40-minute test. So about 30, 40 marks. Okay, but I'd have to look at it carefully, but I'm guessing. Okay, all right, Ruben, I hope you got what you needed. Okay, so this is this activity. This is what you have to do here. Then in the show button, you need to change the stretch property of the image. This is all stuff we've done. A nice, easy, calm, fun activity to do before the long weekend or on the long weekend. Then you need to do this in the change button. So there's the change button. you've got to change the caption, remove the bold, change the color of the label's font, load the picture, and enable the reset button. Okay, we discussed the fact that if you want to put in a that's, you need two quotes. Okay. And then in the reset button, you have to reset all the objects and set it back to the way it was. And this is then what the program is going to look like depending on which buttons you selected. Okay. Right. So what is my takeaway message? You read the questions carefully when you're working through activities. Use the object inspector to help you with code. I'm going to quickly, because you all asked me about the tab sheet, I'm going to very quickly create a program and just show you how it works. Okay. The people in, yes, Jared, yes. Okay. From Monday next week. So spread the word. Okay. Okay. How will I do exactly the same way? Okay. So this is called a page control. So I add the page control. This is what it looks like to begin with. Then I right click and I say new page, new page, new page. And I now have 3 different tab sheets. Okay. Another important, no, I'm not actually going to go there because then I'm pushing my luck. But that's what a page control with tab sheets looks like. And you can add different things to each one of the tab sheets. Okay. All right. So there are the links if you need the data, or to go to the Teen Geeks website to find out what's happening from next week. It's my pleasure, Kay. I hope you learned something. This is what I would have done with you on Monday. Flowcharts, and have a look at algorithms again, looking at the 2 of them together, the logic behind planning a program. I don't know. Okay, so I don't know, Bland, if you're one of my students, but my IT students are going to be moving across to Teams with me from Monday. That's why I've had to stop teaching this, because I need to now start doing some proper all over stuff. Oh, how will you get the memo for pool? My students, I'll give it to you. I will also, if somebody takes over from me, I will give it to them. Okay, so that they can give it to you. All right, so hopefully you've all learned something. I have really enjoyed these lessons, and hopefully they will find somebody to carry on for you. I can't answer that. I don't know when we're going back to school. It sounds like maybe we will find out from the education department what their plan is at 3:30 or 4:30 this afternoon. Okay, so is that it? Nobody got any more questions? Oh, please don't forget about all the hashtags and the YouTube. Okay, and all the sponsors. Remember, this has been sponsored. Okay. Hi, guys. Have a nice long weekend.